Amhara forces launch a new round of eviction of Tigrayan residents in western Tigray, displacing anywhere from 8,000 to 20,000 Tigrayans. Welcome to all our viewers watching us live through television screens and our online media platforms, Facebook and YouTube. I'm Marin Imana, will be reading the news for you today. Stay tuned. The Ethiopian government continues to bombard civilians with its most recent round of attacks, hitting the town of Kasagita in Afar and claiming the lives of 51 civilians and injuring dozens more. Aura Hagaruthensai has the details.
The Ethiopian government perpetrated yet another airstrike in the town of Kasagita in Afar regional state earlier this week. The bombardment has devastated the town, killing 51 civilians and wounding dozens more.
Many people and animals have been injured. Farmers have lost their crops. Crops they had planted months ago were burned before they could be gathered. We have no way to escape. Families have been separated. The bombardment has affected everyone living in this area.
የምስኪኖች ቤት በአየር በከባድ መሳሪያ ሲገዛህ የነበረ መንግስት የሚደበድብበት ሀገር አላየሁም.
I have never seen a government bombarding poor civilian residents before. The bombardment claimed the lives of many people, including children and women. We are disparate and helpless. We have no idea who could hear our cries about what happened here in Kasagita. The so-called Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is bombarding non-stop. Human bones, including that of the elderly and children, are turned into ash here where 51 people died.
Residents of Kasagita said they too have been seriously affected by the ongoing siege that has discontinued all basic services and blocked food aid and medical supplies from reaching the surrounding areas.
There is no food here. We are hurting a lot. It is our government that is doing this to us, nobody else.
አሁን ያልስንጓዝ የነበርንበት ዲሞክራሲ ያመጣልን አቶ መለስ ከሞተ ጊዜ ጀምሮ ህይወታችን ያለበት ዓለም አልናውቅም። ሰማይ ወኪል አላገኘንም። አብይም ብንሰማም
Since Meles' days, everything has changed. Do you hear me? We are unable to find a representative. We hear Abiy's name mentioned every day, but he had done nothing good for us. Powermongers like Awal Arba and his groups don't care about us. They have rather abandoned us to aerial bombardments.
ሹመት የጣማቸው ነው አወል አርባ ላይ ያደረጉት ወከባ ይሆናል እንጂ አፋር ያስገደለው አፋር ህዝብ ላይ የተቀሙት ጥቅም የለም ማለት ነው.
It is to be recalled that Ethiopian forces conducted an airstrike in a mosque in Chefarobit in the Amhara region, killing 67 civilians and injuring dozens more.
The ethnic cleansing campaign in western Tigray has been ongoing for over 1 year now. Ethiopian forces led by Amhara militia and Fano vigilante group have committed horrific crimes and evicted over 1 million people. The expulsion of Tigrayans from western Tigray continues till this day, with government authorities estimating somewhere between 8,000 to 20,000 persons displaced in the past few days alone. Haile Garu has the details.
Tigray is home for 2.2 million internally displaced persons, of which more than half were displaced from western Tigray, where Ethiopian forces led by the Amhara militia and Fano vigilant group have been committing ethnic cleansing and displacing much of its Tigrayan population. The displacement of Tigrayans has continued until this day, where thousands of Tigrayans are being loaded onto track and driven to northwestern Tigray.
We have been expelled, tortured, and our properties looted by Abiy Ahmed's forces, Amhara militia and Fano vigilante group. They loaded us on trucks and forcibly brought us here. We came here with nothing. They took everything we owned. Now we are in a devastating situation.
For almost a year we've been witnessing unspeakable tragedies in western Tigray. They attacked both males and females. We were detained, beaten, and our money and all our belongings were taken from us in broad daylight.
On November 6th this year, they started beating elders that can't even move with sticks and metal. We had to travel a long and tiresome journey to arrive here.
We came here without any property. The situation in Western Tigray is escalating now. Their ultimate goal is to exterminate the people of Tigray.
The internally displaced persons say that Amhara authorities had on multiple occasions stated their intention to eradicate Tigrayans from Western Tigray.
Amhara Special Force, militia and Fano Vigilant Group were gambling with our lives in Western Tigray. They don't want to see people with Tigrayan origin. They would tell us this is in every public meeting. They called their speeches about exterminating Tigrayans.
They ordered us to leave our land. They told us that we could not live here anymore. They have no human element. They humiliated us.
The Amhara Fano Vigilant Group officially disclosed that they don't want to see Tigrayans in Western Tigray. Their daily motto is dumping Tigrayans into the Tekeze River. Their cruelty has no limit. We are not their enemies. We used to do good things in our entire life for them.
Taglai Gabramedhin, administrator of the northwest zone of Tigray, expressed his concern regarding the tragedies carried out by the invading forces in Western Tigray.
Western Tigray is hell for Tigrayans these days. The atrocities being committed are tragic. Tigrayans are forcibly loaded on trucks and dumped into the banks of the Tekeze River. These people are actually the lucky ones.
Tigray zonal authorities have reported that the number of newly displaced persons could range from 8,000 to 20,000 persons, exasperating an already dire humanitarian crisis that has left nearly 1 million people in famine-like conditions and over 5 million in need of emergency assistance. The United Nations on Wednesday announced that it planned to send a joint UN mission to the area to give a better understanding of the current crisis.
The Oromo Federalist Congress issued a statement on Wednesday calling for the establishment of a transitional government to save the country from the brink and prevent more suffering to harm Ethiopian citizens. The Oromo Federalist Congress is one of the most prominent political parties in Ethiopia and had been expected to make major gains come election season. Many of the party's prominent members, including Jawar Mohammed and Bakala Garba, would later be arrested and much of the party's property confiscated, leading to the party's withdrawal from the election process. Abil Zagawa has the details.
Oromo Federalist Congress issued a statement on Wednesday calling for the current ruling party and its leaders to change course from a destructive path that has pushed the country to the brink of potential collapse. The statement said even though the OFC was more than willing to cooperate with the ruling party in drawing the roadmap for a peaceful transition, members of OFC have been imprisoned en masse, forced to flee, beaten and shot dead for expressing disagreements with the government decisions. The statement said the 2021 election was ill-designed and implemented and had led to an illegitimate election process that has brought the country to a critical crossroad of uncertainty. The statement stated that now, more than ever before in the country's history, armed conflict is not limited to armed factions but also ordinary citizens with no military training and knowledge of international laws. The party called for the following steps to be taken to salvage the country from complete collapse and its people from the ongoing blood path. 1. The party called for an immediate establishment of an interim government. 2. The party urged for all warring parties to negotiate for ceasefire immediately and provide unfettered humanitarian access to all in need of assistance. 3. All political prisoners must be released immediately. 4. The party called for an inclusive transitional process where no major stakeholder be excluded. 5. The party stated that the transitional government should be governed by a transitional charter. 6. The party calls upon the international community to support the disordered economy of the country so as to ensue a stable transition period.
Earlier this week, the Ethiopian government informed the Embassy of Ireland in Addis Ababa that the Minister of Foreign Affairs is expelling 4 of 6 diplomats based in the country. The Ethiopian government told Simon Coveney, Ireland's foreign minister, that the expulsion was due to the position that the Ireland has articulated on the ongoing crisis in the country. In a statement, Coveney stated that he deeply regrets the Ethiopian government's decision and said that the reduction of its diplomatic staff members by 2/3 will affect their ability to fully provide consular services. The government of Ireland attempted to bring attention to the humanitarian crises in Tigray by repeatedly bringing it on the agenda at the United Nations Security Council. Ireland has had a diplomat presence in Ethiopia since 1994, working in partnership with the government. The Global Society of Tigray Scholars and Professionals says it has been able to confirm the detention of 32,900 civilians, including priests, medical professionals, prominent scholars, community elders, small business owners, housewives, maids, and the youth, an all-sweeping new wave campaign of detention of Tigrayans by the Ethiopian government. GSTS added that only in the last 2 weeks, the Ethiopian government has detained and transported 21 trucks of Tigrayans in Humera, territory still occupied by the Amhara and Eritrean forces. The society said that this is an open letter addressed to the Michelle Bachelet, United Nations High Commissioner for the Human Rights, and Joseph Biden, the President of the United States of America. The society also said that it had been able to confirm the existence of at least 32 ad hoc internment camps across different parts of Ethiopia, which it said were deliberately organized to detain Tigrayans under harsh conditions, denying detainees basic sanitation facilities, access to water, access to life-saving medicines, and other essential services. Aura Hagarutan reports.
The Global Society of Tigray Scholars and Professionals sent an open letter to Michelle Bachelet, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and Joseph Biden, President of the United States, this past week, disclosing that it had been able to confirm the detention of 32,900 Tigrayan civilians in a sweeping new wave campaign of detention of Tigrayans by the Ethiopian government. The letter also revealed that it had been able to confirm the existence of 36 ad hoc internment camps across different parts of Ethiopia that operate, for lack of a better term, as concentration camps, deliberately organized to detain Tigrayans under harsh conditions, denying detainees basic sanitation facilities, access to water, medication, and other essential services, exposing them to severe risk of health complications due to pre-existing medical conditions and the COVID-19 pandemic. The letter expressed its grave concern about the spike of the already existing ethnic profiling, arbitrary arrest, incarceration, and forced civil disappearance and torture of Tigrayans in Ethiopia to an unprecedented and alarming level following the declaration of a draconian state of emergency by the Ethiopian regime on the 2nd of November 2021. Global Society of Tigray Scholars and Professionals paid attention for the 17,000 Tigrayans military, police, and intelligence officers languishing in various detention centers set up in the premises of military camps across the country, and said it had so far established the unlawful detention of more than 6,348 former officers, Air Force pilots, and former members of the United Nations and African Union peacekeeping forces, including 130 colonels, 409 lieutenant colonels, and 4,606 non-commissioned officers held in at least 17 locations in circumstances that amount to forced disappearances. The letter revealed that the Ethiopian government has continued to violate established rules and norms of international law by carrying out extrajudicial killings of some detained officers and soldiers, including in detention centers located in Asosa, Chancho, Dedesa, Pawi, and West Abaya military camps. The risks of mass killing of detainees can be prevented, said the group, if the international community should choose to act now. Moreover, Global Society of Tigray Scholars and Professionals wrote that extortion, blackmail, and bribes have become frequent occurrences for Tigrayans and daily fares for law enforcement officers and vigilantes. By some accounts, detainees are ordered to pay up to $3,000, almost 3 times Ethiopia's nominal per capita income, to secure their release without any guarantee of repeated detention. The letter asked that the international community condemn in the strongest terms the mass incarceration, summary execution of Tigrayan civilians and escalating genocidal rhetoric in Ethiopia. Press up on the Ethiopian government on its obligation for unconditional observance of international laws and norms on protection of civilians at times of conflict and demands the immediate and unconditional release of all civilians imprisoned because of their Tigrayan identity. Establish UN-mandated independent investigation into all ongoing crimes being committed on Tigrayans outside of Tigray and hold perpetrators accountable. Pressure the regime in Ethiopia to lift the state of emergency designed and being used as a pretext to detain, arrest, kill and torture people of Tigrayan ethnic identity, and call for United Nations bodies and diplomatic missions based in Addis Ababa to immediately act and offer alternative forms of protection, including, as practiced by most countries, temporary refuge within their premises to those seeking protection from threats to their lives. Global Society of Tigray scholars and professionals also sent a letter to Fatia Abdullah, UNHCR representative in Kenya, and Kodek Makori, Commissioner for Refugee Affairs in Kenya, calling for the protection and registration of Tigrayan refugees and asylum seekers in the Republic of Kenya. The letter expressed grave concern regarding the Tigrayan refugees seeking protection and asylum in the Republic of Kenya and requested that Kenyan Refugee Affairs Secretariat to prioritize and speed up the registration of Tigrayan refugees and asylum seekers in Kenya, acknowledge the real and imminent threat facing Tigrayans in countries where the influence of the Ethiopian security apparatus can extend and act to ensure that Tigrayans refugees and asylum seekers are guaranteed safety and protection by the Republic of Kenya while their refugee applications are being processed, and facilitates the release and registration of Tigrayans who have been detained by Kenyan authorities because they remain undocumented and or without registration as a result of current systematic denial of government services, including issuance of identity cards to ethnic Tigrayans in Ethiopia. Ensure UNHCR and the state parties to the UN and the OAU or AU conventions on refugees recognize Tigrayans as prima facie refugees deserving protection as a group of people and facilitate special designations to streamline visa applications and facilitate entry to third countries of refugees.
Amnesty International released a statement on Monday urging the United Nations Human Rights Council to hold a special session to further investigate on violations of the international human rights law and international humanitarian law in the conflict in Tigray. Amnesty International stated that the joint investigation by the United Nations and Ethiopian Human Rights Commission left much to be desired, failing to visit key sites of massacres like Aksum Massacre, which was previously documented and reported on by many international humanitarian groups, including Amnesty International. Amnesty International said that they believe that a special session on Ethiopia's UN Human Rights Council would be essential to ensure international scrutiny of the situation and establish mechanisms that can guarantee justice and accountability for the victims. Tigray External Affairs releases its weekly briefing on Tuesday, November 23, 2021. The briefing shows that the humanitarian condition in Tigray remains bleak as no humanitarian trucks have entered Tigray since October 18, while malnutrition cases in Tigray continue to skyrocket. Abel Zagao reports.
Tigray External Affairs Office released its weekly briefing highlighting the continued obstruction of humanitarian aid coming into Tigray. The briefing said that no aid trucks have entered Tigray since October 18, 2021. The briefing stated that the obstruction had been hard on women and children, as 3.8% of 204,345 screened children were diagnosed with severe acute malnutrition, which is by far higher than the global emergency threshold of 2%, and that at least 186 children have died of malnutrition over the last 3 months. The briefing also said that the government in Addis continues to deny the entry of life-saving medical supplies into Tigray, which has made the rehabilitation of the health care system in Tigray impossible. The report said 48 people have died due to the lack of dialysis equipment just in either comprehensive referral hospital, and that the treatment of over 43,000 HIV patients has been interrupted on account of HIV drugs having run out. The brief indicates that the Tigrayan President Debretsion Gebremichael, in his discussion with Olusegun Obasanjo, has assured his government's commitment to finding a peaceful resolution by outlining 3 broad principles: that any initiative to save Abiy Ahmed from imminent demise is dead on arrival. No meaningful discussion can be held as long as Amhara and Eritrean forces continue to occupy areas of Tigray and commit atrocities, and that extreme care must be given to humanitarian issues and political matters. The office also said that the Amhara force fiercely continues its ethnic cleansing project in western Tigray, saying more than 8,000 people are held in concentration camps just in Humera, and that the international community's response to this slow-moving genocidal campaign has been inadequate, and that it is high time the international community call what is happening in Tigray by its proper name: genocide.
An almost 5 months long siege on Tigray has blocked off all basic services as well as aid and medical supplies, is endangering the lives of millions. The closing of banking services, the blocking of all commercial services from coming into Tigray, and lack of fuel supply that has put millions across different cities in Tigray at risk of urban starvation. Our reporters were in Adigrat, the second largest city in Tigray, to speak to residents on how the siege has affected their well-being. Abil Zagawa reports.
An almost 8 months long occupation of Tigray by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces that could almost be defined by its systematic attack on Tigray's food system, the burning of crops and slaughter of livestock, leaving almost 1 million people in famine-like conditions and millions more in need of emergency assistance. This was shortly followed by an all-encompassing siege on Tigray that blocked off all food and medical supplies, discontinued banking service, and put Tigray under a complete communication blackout. Urban starvation is now a serious and imminent danger. Mebrat Gebrhannes and Abret Kasai are single mothers and residents of Adigrat, the second largest city in Tigray, second only to the capital Mekelle. Mebrat and Abrehet are small business owners, but they say they have found it more and more difficult to make ends meet.
When there was peace, I had a job. I was working in the market. I was a merchant. I used to trade. I was self-reliant before the war broke out. However, now I am starving. I have nothing to eat. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to eat. What can I do? What can I eat? Nothing.
Sarkan Kashem is another mother in Adigrat. She says she has very little left to eat and doesn't know what she can feed her children.
Here it is. This is everything I have left. Soldiers from Tigray's armed forces gave me this break. I am really in a very difficult situation.
The siege on Tigray that has discontinued all basic services including electricity, phones, banking service, and blocked all medical supplies from reaching Tigray has further burdened women and mothers responsible for the care and well-being of their households.
Who can help us? There's no communication. There is no transport. There's nothing. Nobody can help. Even the rich are helpless. This is very difficult. We are all penniless. The riches have no money. The banks have no money. There is no telephone. There is no means of communication. What can we do? Where can we possibly find employment? All we can do is worry. This is because of both of them. There is no telephone. You can't even speak to your child. You can't meet your siblings. I had been sick. I just recovered, but I have no money to get medical service.
Archbishop Barnabas, Archbishop for the zone of Wag Hamra in Ago, disputed a recent report by the Amhara mass media agency alleging that he had been kidnapped. The Archbishop revealed that he is in good health, but called attention to the human suffering caused due to the ongoing siege. Mintaki Dana has more.
Last week, Ethiopian state media came out with reports alleging that Archbishop Barnabas, Archbishop for the zone of Wag Hamra in Agao, had been kidnapped by Tigray armed forces. But Archbishop Barnabas has different story to tell.
I am disappointed that such false allegations were spread about my well-being. Thanks to God, I am safe and well.
Archbishop Barnabas, on the other hand, stated his concern for the many living in his district suffering due to the ongoing siege that has affected the surrounding areas.
The situation was awful. The needy, mothers suffering due to hunger. They would tell me, "Father, we are hungry." It is really heartbreaking. The condition here was really hard. All I can say is that I am pleased to serve those who are in need.
The zone of Wag Khimra has been under siege by the Ethiopian government for months. Food aid and medical supplies denied, and basic services such as electricity, banking, and phone services blocked.
Since the start of the conflict, the Ethiopian government has tirelessly spread a false allegation regarding the conduct of Tigrayan forces in different parts of the country, including Tigray. These false allegations have shown a sharp increase as Tigrayan forces continue to make an important gains. Our reporters were in Kombolcha talking to the religious fathers in the city about the conduct of Tigrayan forces. Winta Kirana has more on this.
Since Abiy Ahmed launched the genocidal war on the pretext of law enforcement operation on the people of Tigray, the atrocities he committed have claimed the lives of many civilians, and the hateful propaganda he preached have destroyed the social bonds that took hundreds of years to build. Religious fathers from the Kombolcha city say the false propaganda spread by the media owned and affiliated to Abiy Ahmed are causing the nation, nationalities, and the people of Ethiopia to mistrust and hate each other.
Kombolcha ከተማ እና ደሴ ከተማ ብዙ ሃይማኖት ተቋማቶች አሉ።
There are many religious institutions in both Kombolcha and Dese that belongs to mainly Christian and Muslims. For the last 27 years, we used to live peacefully and with love and respect. But during those last 3 years, we have gone through a lot of ups and downs. They told us a lot of hateful propaganda in ways that divide us. But what we see and hear in the media are different from the reality we are now witnessing here. We had a very hard time to separate the right from the wrong.
Since Abiy claimed to the throne, I always have been unhappy about him. I have been saying that this guy isn't a good leader. When he gives statement or whatever he does, he always is lying. Look at all the teenagers here. They are killing their time because there is no job they can do. It's so sad.
All the young people who are dying daily were the ones that were supposed to shoulder the responsibility to build the country. But we all know that war can only cause destruction.
The religious fathers also said that it puts them in shock when they hear the alleged news that Tigray forces killed hundreds of teenagers in Kombolcha, which they say is baseless.
No youngster is killed here. We are religious fathers, and it is sad to hear such things. We should be the first ones to acknowledge the truth and deny the false. No single person has been killed in this city, let alone the alleged mass killing of 200 people. It is false. All they did when they entered the city was giving orientation to come down. They say to us, don't be afraid and stay inside your home.
It's false. No one is killed in this city. I can tell in the name of God that no one is killed.
This whole false propaganda puts families in worry, and we have been trying to calm those families, saying no one is dying here, especially families that are out of this country should calm down.
The religious fathers added that the bad image portrayed by the Abiy's media and the truth about the Tigrayan forces are quite opposite. They give their testimony about the discipline of the Tigray forces as follows.
We have been told that the Tigrayan force would beat us, kill us, and destroy our property. But now the reality on the ground is unlike what we heard. It is even more that we expected. They gathered us and told us to stay calm, and the local administrators also can keep doing their job if we want them to do. There is no problem caused by the Tigrayan forces. They are peaceful.
Ever since the Tigrayan forces entered here in Kombolcha, nothing is disturbed. We just continued our business as usual.
Religious fathers also condemned those who are supporting and endorsing the war on the name of their religious entitlements.
Those who give their blessing to the civil war are by no means serving God. This obvious is politics, and I don't think religious fathers should get involved in such an unspiritual mission. We condemn those who motivate and instigate further killings.